you're functionally the showrunner. It
Yes.
seems like. Yeah. What is that like to go from kind of like contributing writer to this long time series where I love Family Guy. I loved it all through college, but it is like it's a lot of like current humor and references, and that's kind of what you're working with. What was it like to then jump into this, where this is an adaptation and you're kind of running the show?
Yeah, it's a completely different world, and not running versus not running, because I was, from 2004 to 2009 or so, I co-ran Family Guy with David Goodman and Seth MacFarlane. But coming into this world from animation, and I had done live action stuff, but all half-hour stuff, I stepped into something that I was not prepared for. I mean, there's the big budget stuff, the visual effects. It was a huge world that I stepped into, and I learned an awful lot on the pilot, and surrounded myself with people who had done it before and who I trusted, and I learned an awful lot, and I've spent the last 6 months really since the pickup working with writers and coming up with the new storylines, and we're doing 9 more episodes on top of the pilot, and all the stories are figured out, so I know exactly what the season is, and 8 of the 10 scripts are written, and so we're well on our way. But it was different for sure.
How's the writers' room different compared to Family Guy or something?
That's a good question. Well, Family Guy is largely a bunch of guys sitting around throwing food at each other, making fart jokes. This was a wonderfully diverse crew, and look, we had a lot of fun and we made a lot of jokes, but just a great group of people. And Family Guy is great too. Every room is different, There's, I think, because there were more sort of dramatic stuff that we were doing this year, we really, with the room, got into, people shared a lot of their backstories and stuff that happened in their lives, and we bonded. We went to, in June, I think, we went to Alien Con in LA, because we are going to take Harry and Asta at some point this season. We'll go to an alien convention together, which is going to be fun. So we got a lot of great ideas from Alien Con. So yeah, it was a good group of writers this year. We had a lot of fun.
How much did you guys keep from the comics? Alan was telling us that it veers off pretty quickly.
It does.
How do you decide what to...
It's hard. I mean, at first I wanted to take as much as I could, and a lot of the jumping off point, all the Sam Hodges stuff is in the comic, and instead of keeping that enclosed like to the first episode, which in the first comic we find out who did it and everything in the first book, I took that and I'm making that a sort of the town story for the first season. I had to make a decision early on, like, okay, well, will every episode be, thank you, will every episode be someone dies and Harry tries to figure it out? And I thought taking the time to do that would take time away from exploring the characters. So basically that murder story that happens in the beginning that's in the comic, I stretched that out for the whole season as a first season sort of town story, because it's a great way to get to know the people in town, how they're reacting to it, and other things that happen along the way. And so there are, a lot of stuff I try to keep as much as I could, but just because it's a different genre, I had to change some stuff. I did add the thing about Harry's mission here, just because in TV, you to sort of exist in the current landscape of cable television, I feel like you need the character to be moving forward to a definitive goal. But I also knew that I could have him do that and still then have these other things come up, be obstacles between him and that goal, which would be good conflict for the characters. And also in this, I had him take over a guy's body. And what's fun about that, in sort of building to the comedy of it, is creating a situation where he realizes after a while he picked the wrong body to sort of take over, because first of all, he took over a doctor's body, and that's the reason he was pulled into town to begin with. But other things will come up as the season goes on where he's like, well, I shouldn't have picked this guy because this is a nightmare. So another thing, like, he's got this mission, and creating all these obstacles between him and that was a lot of fun mechanism for the series, for the season.
How did it come up with to hire Alan as Harry?
Yeah, that's, we saw probably, I don't know, I got to count at some point, probably 100, 115 different actors from LA, New York, England, Ireland, Scotland, from all over the place. And he literally was the very last guy that came in. And it was sort of an exploration I thought I knew who the character was, and I knew pretty right away when we were auditioning actors. We'd have amazing actors come in, and it just wasn't working. I didn't know why. And then I realized when Alan finally came in that I didn't really know. The writer's supposed to know what they're looking for, and I had no idea. Like, it wasn't working. I'm like, I thought I knew what this was, but it's so specific. And then it wasn't until Alan auditioned, I'm like, okay, well, that's what it is. And I didn't know until he did it. And he had this incredible way of feeling removed the way he does in the show, but there's an inherent, like, humanity in Alan that even though he's sort of blank and sort of like alienish, there's still you can sort of feel something behind it. And that's not something that I think you can really learn as an actor. I think it's just part of who he is. So we were very lucky to get him, but he was the very last person to come in. It was incredible.
Kind of going off of that also, we were talking to Alan before, he mentioned kind of making stuff up as he went along, playing with different ideas. How much of that, of filming, do you kind of have to improvise, have to play around? Because with animation, everything has to be meticulously planned out.
Yeah.
So how is it going from the meticulousness of animation to the more freeform of in front of the camera?
It's a good question. You know, on Family Guy, we actually did a decent amount of ad-libbing as well in some cases. I mean, there are some cases in Family Guy when we were recording different gags or cutaways or whatever where we would have a sense of the scene and a lot of like people shouting over each other and it was not scripted. So, and there's an energy to that I always loved. We did a bit once called on Family Guy called, I know we're getting off of Resident Alien, but to make my point, we did a cutaway called Horton Hears a Domestic Disturbance, and it's basically it's Horton, but then in the wall, like on the other apartment next to him, it's just a husband and a wife yelling at each other, fighting, and that wasn't scripted. It was just me and Alex Borstein on mic as the people in the other room just screaming at each other, and I loved the energy of that. And so when we got on set, we have some amazing improv actors. Alan, Liz Bowen, who did Deputy Liv, has been doing improv for 20 years. Corey's unbelievable at it. Sarah's incredible at it as well. She's such a great actress. So getting in a situation where you do we do what's on the page, but then giving some leeway after that to, okay, why don't you have some fun with it? That whole thing with Corey and Liv beatboxing, that was all something that Corey came up with in rehearsals, and we just put them in a car with a couple cameras and had them play around with it, and that's what came out of it. So those moments are hard to script because you can't picture them until they happen. But I love the energy of that, so we're going to try to do that as much as possible when we're shooting.
I love the energy of the soundtrack in the first episode.
Yeah.
How did you go about choosing those songs, from Starships to like some Michael Bublé in there? It's a little bit of everything.
Well, Starships we wanted something. For that one, we were trying to figure out, okay, what's the most ridiculous thing that Alan or Harry could be dancing to? And that was the only song we actually bought early on, or at least knew how much it cost, and because they're singing it, so we had to sort of, can we even afford this? And the other ones are sort of up for grabs, but I really like them. It's a long process because you find stuff you like, and then we had some older stuff from the 50s, which I liked because it sort of creates a timelessness to it. But then I think the network was feeling it, the show was feeling too old, so can we put some new stuff in there? So you try to find a balance of newer stuff, but then some older, Willie Nelson's in there, but then some new stuff, and you try to find stuff that people haven't heard before. That song at the end, that Trouble song, it's been in there now for a year since we did the cut, or 8-9 months, and I just heard it on like a CNN ad for, I'm like, oh, they took my song, you know. Maybe we'll still use it, I don't know, but it's you know, music's a huge part of it, and it really does a lot adding to tone and all that stuff. So yeah, we're gonna keep up a lot of the current music and stuff. Yeah.
You've got to do a soundtrack out.
When we'll do a soundtrack, I know, they probably will. Yeah, there's also a lot of Native American music we're going to try to use as well. With some fantastic current Native American music and artists. So yeah, it's going to be a mixture of new stuff and older stuff. Like the Michael Bublé thing is sort of new but old, and it's kind of cheesy, but in that moment it allowed us to sort of own the cheesiness of that transformation moment, which we've seen 1,000 times. We try to do it a little bit differently with the way the molecules are moving, but again, it's something you've seen before. So if you can layer in sort of something comedic, like Michael Bublé singing over it, and And I love outside of the cabin, the song goes out as the alien's screaming, you know. Yeah, it creates sort of a funny moment out of it and tells the audience we're not taking it too seriously. So,
I enjoyed the Taylor Swift as well.
you know, that was originally Billy Joel's Uptown Girl, which I thought was perfect. Uptown Girl, turns it off. And they were like, we think that's a little too old. Can you do something new? I'm like, yeah, there's 50 million songs. What do you want? That was my argument. Thank you. I'll be calling you to make that argument.
All right. Thank you.